now?
Yes.
All right. So, well, Norval, thank you for inviting me, and thanks everybody else for coming to attend. Um, I'm going to be talking today about advancing quality through innovation and inventive thinking. So I'm glad that you guys are all here. And one of the things I like to do when I talk to a group is make it a little bit interactive. So I'm going to continue to do that today. And if you want to participate, awesome. And I think the chat box is a great way to do that. Well, it's the only way to do it in this case. So if anybody wants to just say hello, just to make sure the chat box is working, I believe if you don't know how to use it, you go up to the top and you click a little button that says chat, and then it pops out and you can type something in. So maybe say hello and where you're from, just so I can see that it's working. And while we're doing that, I don't see anybody typing anything in yet. I'll get started. Here we go. Hello, Dave. All right, one person. Okay, so let me make sure my. Okay, I'm not able to advance my slides. Here we go. All right, just a really quick 30 seconds on our company. We do training, we do workshops, we do facilitation, we coach. I see all the text coming in, the chat coming in. Great. Hello, everyone. We do train the trainer, and we do it all around these innovation tools. You know, the broad umbrella is what we call systematic innovation, and it includes a lot of skills and tools that you use in the very front end of product development. And you'll see some of those as we go through. We are fortunate to have worked with several different companies, many of them from the automotive industry, some of them from consumer product industry, and some of them from the medical industry, and some of them from the service industry. I'll let that ring. Sorry, I'm working from my kitchen table right now. That should ring 3 times and we'll be done. So what's in it for you? I think that's what everybody came here, hopefully to learn something and walk away with something. So here are the 6 things that I'm hoping to accomplish. One is to introduce you to the world of inventive thinking. And another one is to demonstrate how innovation and inventive thinking can be learned. And no matter who you are and no matter what skills you are, you can always increase your ability to be more innovative. I've got to close this chat box so I can see my own stuff. I want you to understand the difference between invention, innovation, and improvement. Some people think those are all the same things, but they're really different. I want to reinforce that breakthrough thinking comes from challenging the assumptions that you have today and breaking some rules. Very important for innovation. And I want to demonstrate how perspectives, patterns, paradigms, and psychological inertia can influence the outcome of your work. And I also want you to be able to walk away with a couple of new skills that you can use immediately. So that's kind of the plan for the day. And Norval, I've got rid of that chat box so I can see some other things. So if there's anything that comes in, let me know.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on it for you.
Yeah, appreciate it. And we're going to do a little bit of interaction here. So I've got some quick questions for you, for everyone, 6 fast questions, and you can type the answers in. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extremely important, how important is innovation to the long-term success of the company you work at? So maybe you can type in a few. All right, I see a 10. Oh, they automatically pop up. Good. 10, 10, 8, 10, 10, 10. Okay, not a big surprise. I kind of knew what the answers was going to be anyways. It's almost always between 8 and 12 on a 10-point scale. So I'm really setting you up for the second question. And the second question is, what are some of the best tools or techniques or skills your company uses to innovate? And by the way, I ask these questions all the time, and I get pretty much the same answer all the time. On the importance is 8 to 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, or 8 to 12. And then when you ask what are the best tools, there's usually a lot of blank stares, a lot of silence. And then somebody will say something like brainstorming. And the whole point I want to make is it's very interesting when we ask these questions, how people say how extremely important innovation is, but then they don't really have a lot of tools and skills to help them do it. So I want to show you today that there's a whole lot of skills out there, a whole lot of tools, techniques, methods to help you think differently and help you innovate. So question number 3, and this is really tough to ask without having a live group, but we'll do the best we can. How many of you believe you're creative or innovative? And you could just type in yes or no. And I'll tell you what I typically get when I ask a group. I typically get about 20 to 30% of the people will say yes, and they raise their hand, I am innovative. And most people will not because they don't think they are. So, and there's a little bit of attitude stuff here going on. If you believe you're not innovative, you probably will never be innovative. You almost have to give yourself permission to try some things. And I believe everybody can be more innovative. So, question number 4, how would you like to be more innovative? Or how many of you, and I think everybody will say, of course I want to be more innovative. But more importantly than do you want to be innovative, the bigger question is, why do you want to be innovative? This is critical in being successful, is to know why you want to be innovative. And maybe you can even type some of those in. Why do you want to be more innovative? And interesting, I see somebody typed in, it's more interesting. I heard people say it's more fun. Now, I've asked this many times, and I've come up with about 10 common reasons that people want to be more innovative. And you'll see where this plays in a little bit later on in my talk. But the reason the typical people want to be more innovative is to be more competitive. I want my company to have a competitive advantage. I'd like to wow my customer. Another completely different reason to be innovative is to better be able to solve tough problems. A third reason is to dramatically be able to reduce cost or complexity. Another reason is to get around your competitor's patent. You might have a competitor that's got this great idea protected, and you need to figure out a way around it. So you need to be innovative to get around there. Another reason might be to solve a conflict that you have in your product or your service. And a conflict is a situation where you want to improve something, and you know how to improve that parameter A, but you hurt parameter B. That's a conflict between A and B. I want to come up with a clever way to do that. Or I just want to come up with new ideas. I sell 10 products. I'd like to sell 15. I want to identify growth opportunities. We want to make sure we're working on the right problems or projects. I want to prove that I understand the future better than my competitors by the offerings that I bring out. So these are some of the reasons to be innovative. Now, is there a difference between innovation, invention, and improvement? Some people think those are kind of the same thing, and I think they're very different, and I want to just take a second to describe this for you, give you kind of the definitions. So invention is the creation of a new idea. We didn't say whether it's a good or bad idea, but it's a new idea. Innovation is taking that idea and converting it into a successful offering that creates new value in the marketplace. The market accepts it. That's an innovation. Now, not all inventions are innovation. As a matter of fact, most inventions are not innovation. They never make it to success. There's lots of bad ideas that are created that disappear very quickly. Okay? There's also the point that most innovation isn't invention. If you look at these two circles there, there's a lot of innovation that is not an invention. It's just an existing idea applied in a very new way, or a combination of existing things applied in a new way. Now, you can improve things without innovating or inventing. A lot of people call that continuous improvement or parameter optimization. So improvement is optimizing something that already exists to improve the current value that it has. It's not about creating new value. It's about improving existing value. And it doesn't do a lot to differentiate you because your competitors are probably doing similar things. And I'll argue that most, not all, but most Six Sigma projects and lean projects and Kaizen and value engineering projects are improvement projects. Not all of them. Some of them create some very innovative ideas, but most of them are improving things. Now, also an interesting thing here in this little kind of Venn diagram a little bit is that all innovation is improvement. I can't think of one innovation that ever came out that's truly an innovation that didn't improve something. But innovation is the best kind of improvement, and the biggest reason is because you can gain a nice competitive advantage by it, and you might be able to protect it through intellectual property and be able to hold that advantage for a while. And the last thing I want to say about this is innovation is a little bit subjective. One person will call something an innovation and somebody else say, no, that's an improvement. And it really depends on how you look at the innovation, what perspective you view it on. We'll talk a little bit more about perspective in a bit. Now, the world that I live in is this innovation world, and we help companies with this innovation stuff by having a framework, which is somewhat of a process, but it's more of a framework because you don't have to use all the steps. You pick the steps that are appropriate. And those steps, we're not going to get into a lot of the detail of the high-level description of the steps, but the steps include understanding needs, generating concepts, evaluating concepts, doing the detailed engineering. That's what the steps are about. And in there, we sprinkle in some best practices in the area of inventive thinking, especially in the front-end portion. So about 4 months ago, I gave a talk at another ASQ conference on paradigms, perspectives, patterns, and psychological inertia. And what I want to do today is I pull a few slides out of that and show you a little bit about that, some of the things that help and hurt innovation. And then I want to kind of turn it back over to you guys in the sense that I'm gonna let you help me figure out what I talk about in detail. So I'm hoping to be able to do this in 25 minutes of me talking, and then you help me decide where I focus in on, and I'll show you how that works in a bit. So this is a conference that the theme of the conference was disruptive thinking and quality. And so that begs the question, what is disruptive thinking? And a definition of disruptive thinking is surprising the market with something new or unexpected, producing an unconventional strategy that leaves competitors scrambling, and turning consumer expectations upside down to take an industry to a next generation. That's what disruptive thinking is all about. And they said this theme was disruptive thinking in quality. Well, what is quality? Well, it's just like innovation has many different definitions, quality does too. Crosby, one of the great definitions of quality is conformance to requirements. If you look at Peter Drucker, he had, I think, maybe even a better definition. He says it's not what you put into the product or service, it's what the customer gets out of it. That's what quality is. And ASQ has a definition too. And here's the definition: characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. So who's the ultimate judge? And you can type in if you want, who's the ultimate judge of all quality? I think most people are going to be typing in right now, customers. Yes, I see a few of them coming in. That's the ultimate judge. And now, who are the primary beneficiaries of disruptive thinking? Now, I would argue that probably still customers, but it could also be internal. It's your customers, whether they're internal or external. Actually, both of them benefit, depending on the nature of the disruption. But we can't rely on our customers to do our disruptive thinking. We really can't. We have to do it ourselves. So we have to adapt new ways of thinking. And maybe we can start with the definition of quality, because ASQ's definition talks about characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. That's all talking about today's needs. And I think maybe disruptive thinking and quality is incorporating not only today's needs, but also tomorrow's needs. I mean, a really great company is a company that can anticipate the future and get to the future before the competitors. So that's the first thing we'll look at. So how do we do that? How do we see the future and create this disruptive thinking and quality? Well, I think a big part of it is through innovation and inventive thinking. And those are strategies and skills that you can learn to create new customer value. Now, there's good news and bad news on this. And we always like bad news first, so let's take the bad news. The bad news is there's a whole lot of forces that are keeping you guys from being innovative. And the good news is there's also a lot of forces that can help you be more innovative. So I'm going to ask you another question here, so get ready to type. Which of these two would you like to understand better? The things that inhibit innovation or the things that enable innovation? Okay, I see Emily, it says enable. Christopher says enable. Joanne, enable. Okay, and you know what? the answer to me is both of these. Not only do I want to know the enabling things that help me, but I also need to understand what's keeping me from innovating so I can watch out for those things and maybe get around those things. So really, they're both important. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the bad ones, but mostly about the good news, the enablers. So these four major forces are the two of them are paradigms and perspectives, and then there's patterns and psychological inertia. So if our goal is disruptive thinking and quality to create new value, the good news is perspectives and patterns are going to help you be more innovative. I'll show you that in a bit. The bad news is this psychological inertia stuff and these current paradigms that you have are going to hurt you. All right, so let's unpack that a little bit, and talk a little bit about paradigms. And you've all heard the term paradigms. Actually, it was popularized back in the late '80s. Some of you probably remember a guy named Joel Barker. He created some videos. He created an excellent video on paradigms. And anyway, what paradigms are they're intellectual filters or mental models that you have that are accepted either by you as an individual or a group, and they shape how you see things and how you act on and interpret things. So I like to give a little example of this, and I'm not sure how well this is going to work, being that we're doing this on a webinar, and I don't know about the refresh rate of your screen and what you can see and what you can't see that I'm going to show you, but let's try it anyways. So what I want to show you in this little blue box here are some cards, and I want you to try to remember the cards. Okay? Now, they're going to come pretty fast in that box there. So let's see how well this works, and maybe somebody can comment on whether they even saw them or not. I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but let's try it. So here we go. I'm going to show you 8 cards. Okay. And by the way, no talking or typing any details. Just you can tell me whether you see it or not. Here we go. Okay, now can somebody respond as if they saw them? Because I'm not sure if this works over a webinar. Okay, I see yes. Good, good. You saw them. All right, great. Now they went pretty fast, so I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to slow it down so make it easier to see. So here we go. Watch the same blue box area. Try to remember the cards. And here we go. Okay, so not to belabor this, but quite often I'll ask people, how many of you noticed there was a different number of cards on the second time as there were in the first? Several people will raise their hand, and there wasn't a different. It was exactly the same amount. Or that the cards changed from the first time to the second time. Some people will say that. No, they did not. But here's my question to you. My question to you is, and just answer yes or no, did you notice anything strange? And then answer yes or no. Don't tell me what it was. Just tell me yes or no. Okay, I see 2 yeses, a whole bunch of no's. There's a yes, no, 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 no. And this is pretty common. It's about 80% of the people will say no, they didn't notice anything, and 20% will say yes. So remember, paradigms are very strong, and they act as big filters to incoming data. If the data you see doesn't fit your rules, quite often you don't see it. And now what happened here is these cards were a little bit strange, and I'm going to show you the cards. There was actually a red spade in here, 2 red spades, and black hearts. And quite often when you see those, the original exercise here would be to write down the cards, and people would write down the cards that fit the rules, and the cards that didn't, they couldn't remember. It's just an interesting phenomenon, a quick interactive exercise that show you the power of paradigms. Okay. So another force that works against you is this thing called psychological inertia. And it's very similar to paradigms, but it's the inevitability of behaving a certain way that's been inscribed by habits or paradigms. Okay, it's an inertia thing, a psychological inertia, not a physical inertia. And strong paradigms can cause this psychological inertia. So I have another interactive exercise. Unfortunately, it's a hands-on exercise that I can't do, but Einstein has this great quote. I'm sure you've heard about this, that you can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking you used when you created them. So we have to look at things differently because of our strong psychological inertia and paradigms. And a classic example of strong psychological inertia is the Swiss, who had 95% of the market share in watches in the 60s and 70s, and they went in a matter of a couple of years from 90% down to 5%. And the reason was because the Japanese came out with quartz watches, and which was a whole different paradigm on how to keep time. And the ironic thing about that story, and that I'm sure most of you know, is that the Swiss invented the quartz watch, but they didn't recognize it as the way of keeping time. They said that it doesn't have mainsprings, it doesn't have bearings, it's not the future. Their psychological inertia was along a particular technology, and they didn't see what was coming. All right, enough on, yes, Kodak, I see, yeah, did the same thing with digital cameras. Enough about the inhibitors. What about the enablers? So let's talk a little bit about patterns and perspectives, and these are critical for success too. So patterns are reoccurring characteristics that identify a phenomenon that serves as a model for predicting future behaviors. That's what patterns are. And patterns, by the way, and perspectives, I'm going to show you in a minute, are a great way to break your paradigms and your psychological inertia. So patterns, patterns are all over. They're useful. And they're all over. You see stock market patterns. If you understand patterns of stock market, you can do really good in the market. I don't. Everybody wants to do the opposite, or should do the opposite of what I do, and I don't do much, by the way. But there's patterns that you can look at to predict things. Hollywood movie plots. I'm sure you've all seen movies and started to watch it. You can predict how it's going to end because there are certain patterns that are used. There's musical patterns. There's mathematical patterns. How about this one in red? Anybody recognize that? Maybe you can type in if you recognize that pattern. I'll tell you. It's the Fibonacci. Yes, all right, Walter. Fibonacci sequence. That's a pattern in mathematics, and the interesting thing about that is it occurs in nature as well. There are biological evolution patterns. There are childhood behavior patterns. There's even patterns in this crazy game. I'm sure most of you have seen this game before, rock, paper, scissors. And believe it or not, the odds of winning and doing this is, people will say 1 in 3 because it's 3 options, and that makes perfect sense. And it's a random game. But actually, if you understand the patterns, you can lose in this game less than 25% of the time using these patterns because it's not a random game. You think it is, but it's not. There are people that have studied this and found that there are certain patterns that happen. So here are some of the patterns. And these tend to happen more than 33%. So winners tend to repeat their winning hand a little more than 33%. And losers tend to change their losing hand more than 33% of the time. And not only do they change their hand, it's almost predictable how they're going to change it. If they had rock, they'll go to the next. They'll go to paper, the name. It's suggested to them. And not only that, men typically shoot rock first, and women typically shoot scissors first. So knowing these patterns, you can have an advantage over your competitors. And there's patterns all over the place. Patterns are everywhere. There's business success patterns, athletic success patterns, failure patterns, patterns for mastering chess, patterns for landing airplanes. There's all kinds of patterns, even a pattern for pattern proficiency. You discover a pattern, you practice the pattern, you form a habit, and then you can achieve success. Patterns are kind of like recipes that you can follow. Positive, negative. Some patterns turn into habits. Some patterns are yet to be discovered. I'll bet most of you didn't know that there was any patterns in rock, paper, scissors, but somebody discovered them. And now the whole point of all this is there's innovation and creativity patterns. There are things that you can do to help you be more innovative. And these patterns come from an analysis of a lot of successful companies, successful people, successful products, and they try to understand what are the patterns that these people all have in common. Can we strip away the subject matter and come up with some things that are useful to help us have an advantage. Now, some of you probably heard of a science called TRIZ, T-R-I-Z. It's a Russian acronym for the Theory of Inventive Problem Solving. It's an innovation tool. And they're discovered, the guys that developed this discovered there's patterns. And the way they discovered the patterns is by analyzing patents. So if you look in the bottom lower corner there, you see, bikes, the very first bike in the upper left, and then how bikes evolved over the years. And you see toothbrushes is the next thing. How did they evolve? Cameras, shoes, airplanes. What they did is they studied how systems evolved over time, and they recognized there's certain behaviors that all systems do, or most systems do, as they evolve. And if you can strip away the subject matter, understand those patterns, then you can apply your system to those patterns and come up with ideas. Now, I'm not going to go through these. I'm going to real quickly show you. Here are some of the patterns of trees. These are the classic patterns. And the last one, increasing levels of automation. I see an animation here. Automation is a huge trend that's happening these days. I mean, manufacturing, robots are exploding. They're being used for obvious reasons, to minimize variation and so on. And then, you see robots even in hotels. Here's a room service that's bringing somebody something. You see personal robots. There's robots now that are in Wendy's and in McDonald's restaurants that are taking your order. Cars are turning into robots with all the autonomousness of them. So that is a pattern. Perspectives. Perspectives are huge too. Perspective's going to help you, and this is the biggest thing I want to talk about is perspectives, particular ways of thinking about something and considering things. And it's another way to break your psychological inertia. And perspectives are huge for lots of reasons. Here's a bad reason. I find this all the time, and you might as well, is that I estimate that 30 to 40% of all communications are misinterpreted. A huge percent of communications are misinterpreted. And partly it's because you don't know what perspective the person you're communicating is seeing your conversation or hearing your conversation with. And a lot of it is because of a bad attitude that some people have. They think that they're only responsible for what they say, not what somebody else understands. And I think it's very important to be responsible for not only what you say, but you should be responsible for what other people perceive too. And the very worst form of communication, this is kind of a little bit of a tangent and a little bit of a joke, but it's true. I think the very worst form of communication is texting. I mean, I'm sure that some of you recently got a text that you read it and you felt like this lady here. What? What were they saying? And here's kind of a cute little example. And yeah, so I think texting is the best way to miscommunicate how you feel and misinterpret what others say. And this is a cute little illustration of that, the text that I saw the other day. So somebody said, "The bike's still for sale?" And the response was, "Yes, it is." And then the person asked, "What's the lowest you'll go on it?" And the response was 2 miles an hour. Anything less than that, you'll tip over. There's a kind of a humorous example of how you can misperceive something because words, are important. All right. So with respect to innovation, we have to look at things differently. And when we look at things differently, we see things differently. So another kind of cute example, some of you probably heard this story about the photographers out in the woods and a bear came along. And, the guy started running. And the guy in the back or the guy in front all of a sudden stops and puts on his tennis shoes. And the guy in the back yelling at him, he says, "Forget the tennis shoes. You can't outrun that bear." And then the response was, "Well, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." That's a different perspective. He's looking at things from a different perspective. And you've probably seen this on the internet. Go ahead, type in, what do you see here? Do you see a black and blue dress or a gold and white? This one was hot a couple years ago. Okay, gold and white. Joanne, I'm with you. Gold and white. A lot of gold and whites. Good. It's surprising. Here's a black and blue. Looks like a lot of black and blues are coming in as well. All right. Now, here's the point, guys, is which perspective is right? And there's not an answer to that. It's not, none of them are right. They're both right. But it's funny how we tend to think our perspective is right. And when I see this, I see gold and white. I don't know how anybody sees black and blue. It's crazy. But they do see black and blue. And there's not one correct perspective. There are different perspectives. So you want to consider in innovation lots of perspectives, because that's where innovation comes from. All right, moving on. So there's tons of perspectives. This is the huge part of what I wanted to show you, is that there's multiple perspectives that you should look at a situation from to gain clarity. And we know what a perspective is. I think the best definition is a lens in which you view a situation to gain new insights. So here's a little quality kind of a joke or a cartoon, but it's about perspectives, and I think it'll resonate with you. If you look at a glass of water, this is that glass analogy, and if you think about how quality professionals perceive a glass of water, well, you start with the optimist, and we all know the optimist will look at that glass and say the glass is half full. The pessimist will look at it and say the glass is half empty. The green belt or black belt or quality engineer will look at it and say, how do I reduce the variation in clarity and wall thickness and strength? Because that's what Six Sigma is all about, reducing variation. A lean master is going to look at this, and lean is all about minimizing or eliminating waste. A lean master is going to look at this and say, why is that glass twice as big as it should be? What a waste of glass. What's an innovator going to do? An innovator is going to look at this and ask crazy questions like, why do I need a glass? What other ways are there to hold a liquid? Why am I so thirsty? How can I get by without a glass? So they're going to ask some very weird questions. That's what innovation's about, is looking at things differently. Now, what all of these people have in common, whether you're a Six Sigma professional or a quality engineer or a lean master or value engineer or an innovator, what everybody has in common is they're trying to improve the situation. But there are different tools, skills, and perspectives depending on what your specialty is. And what I'm trying to show you here is, there's a toolbox for Six Sigma, there's a toolbox for lean, there's also a toolbox for innovation. And here are some of those tools, some of them. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at something in a different way. And I want to show you a couple of those. Let's see, I'm going to skip this, hold on. I'm hitting my advanced button. So here's our framework. And again, I'm not going to go through this, but this is the framework for inventive thinking. And the first two steps are about understanding your customers. The next three steps, 3, 4, and 5, are about generating ideas and evaluating them. And the last three steps are about implementing them and engineering them. Let me back up. We're going to focus for a second on generating concepts. And I want to show you that there's a lot of different ways to come up with ideas. But I want to show you this. And if you remember earlier, I asked you, why do you want to be more innovative? So I'm going to jump over to another file. And I'm going to ask you, if I were to ask, I'm going to answer for you just to speed this up a little bit. But if I were to ask you guys, how many tools do you have in your house? You would come back and say, well, I've got hundreds of tools. And so if I were to ask you, if I were to ask you which tool is best, and by the way, there is a correct answer. I do want you to type this in. What's the best tool in your house? And there is a correct answer. See if anybody can get it. Okay, good. First person, Joanne. Depends on the requirement, and that is the right answer. It depends on, yeah, I see hammer coming in, a DeWalt variable speed drill and driver. Okay, it depends on the situation. Extremely important to understand that. No, duct tape is not. I saw somebody say that as well. So it depends on the job. Now, here's your tools in your house in alphabetical order on the top of this matrix. Alarm clock, battery, bucket, you can read that. Now, here are some jobs on the left side. Now, I'll just pick one randomly, whatever. I'll pick, I want to tighten the kid's bike stand. What this matrix does is it shows you which tool is best for the job. And it shows you that by going across a row and finding the darkest cell. Actually, tighten the kid's kickstand. Okay, a screwdriver here. And then over, hopefully, is a wrench. Yeah, there we go. Wrench is way on the end. Or I can just click this button. Repair the dishwasher. Let me just click it. Instead of seeing this alphabetically, if I click repair the dishwasher, it's going to sort from the best tool to the worst tool based on the color here. So the darkest cells are the best tools, and the white ones, I would never go grab a battery charger to repair a dishwasher. Doesn't make sense. But I would get a screwdriver, a wrench, flashlight, knee pads, and maybe YouTube. You get the idea. This is very easy to understand. And the reason I'm showing you this is because there's one of these for innovation. Here's the innovation one. Okay? So there's a bunch of different tools and skills that help you solve problems and create new ideas. And they're on the top here. Well, which one is best? Actually, I had a client. The reason I created this because I had a client that said that. This was 10 years ago. They said, you know what? I know you got a lot of tools for innovative thinking. We don't have time to learn them all. Can you just show me the best ones? So I ended up putting all the tools across the top of a matrix. And then I said, well, why do people need to innovate? These are the things we talked about earlier. And then I assessed these tools on their ability to accomplish these goals. So I want you guys to type in. I want you to type in just some numbers here. I want to type in 1 through 10, or just some numbers, 1 through 10, of the things in here that you would like to learn more about, you would like to be better at. Here's where I want to transfer it over to you, and you tell me what to show you, and I'll pick one of these tools, and I'll introduce it to you. I see some numbers coming in, and I see 2, 7, 5, 8. Okay, so far everything's different. 2, 5, 7. 8, okay, done. 2, 5, 7, and 8. So I'm going to put weights on these things. I'm going to get everybody have every one of these an equal weight. But I saw 2, 5, 7, and 8 a lot. So let me go to number 2 and give it a high weight. 2, 5, increase cost or complexity. Give it a high weight, an 8, 7, and 8, and there's a better way to do this, but this is good enough for the time we have. Okay. And okay, let's just see what happens here. Now let's sort this. Instead of alphabetically, I'm going to sort right here, the Pareto's on the bottom here. I'm going to sort this by application. And now it's going to tell me a little Pareto based on the importance of those things, which tools are best. And there's a Pareto here. Now, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to jump in and show you a couple of them and introduce them really quickly. Nerval, can you tell me how much time I have left?
You have approximately 15 minutes until the top of the hour, so I would say take maybe another 5 minutes or so.
Okay. So then, all right, we have very limited time. I'm going to try to show you a little bit about 2 tools then. I'll pick these 2 because they lend themselves. Brainwriting, super simple tool. As a matter of fact, the first time I heard about brainwriting, I didn't like it because I said it was too simple. It's just too simple and easy. But I became to be a real fan of it, and you can learn it really quickly. So let me. I happen to have it. Let me pull up the file here and show you the essence of brainwriting. Now, here's what brainwriting is in a nutshell. Brainwriting is brainstorming that's quiet, which sounds insane. But one of the reasons of brainstorming, or one of the problems with a brainstorming session that you probably all experienced, is dominant personalities that control the conversation. So you get 10 people in a room, you're having a brainstorming session, and 2 or 3 of the people do all the talking, and they dictate where you talk, what you talk about. And those other 8 people, even though they're maybe very smart and have good ideas, or maybe they're shy, they don't participate well. So one of the biggest problems of brainstorming is unequal participation by the people in the session. Brainwriting solves that problem. And here's how it works. I'll show you 2 slides on how it works. Maybe even 1 slide. Let's see if we can. This is probably the best slide here to show you. Brainwriting uses a worksheet. Come on, go into show mode. Okay, it uses a little 11 by 17 worksheet, and if you want, you can email me afterwards, and I can send you a worksheet that you can print out. And so the way this works is you have a round. Everybody gets one of these worksheets. You create a problem statement. Round number 1, everybody writes down 3 ideas on how to address the problem statement independently, quietly, on a little Post-it note. And at the end of the first round, you mix all these sheets up, put them in the center of the room, pass them back out. You grab one, and then in round 2, you write 3 more ideas. But you get to read the previous ideas for inspiration. And then the next round, you put them in the center of the room, pass them all around, and you write 3 more ideas. In a very short period of time, you can generate lots of ideas. And everybody's participating, so you're really getting that all the different perspectives of people involved, and you're getting lots of ideas. Really simple technique. So there's your 2-minute definition of that. And there's one other one that I want to show you, that there's tools that are more scientific than that psychological thing that I just showed you, which is brainwriting. It's a tool based on psychology. There's also tools based on technology. And trimming is one that I like showing people because fairly quickly I can illustrate what trimming is all about. And I'll try to do it at lightning speed here. But what trimming is, in a nutshell, is trimming is where you, and it's good for cost reduction. I noticed one of the things that a lot of people were typing in was cost reduction. Trimming is where it shows you how to get rid of any part of any system or any step in any process, which everybody's saying, oh, come on, no way you can do that. But you can. Any part. So here's a jump rope, a 5-part jump rope. There's 2 wooden handles, 2 chrome caps, and a leather rope. Can anybody type in something that you could trim to get rid of cost? And okay, interesting. The handles. Okay, so handles are very common. Handles. How could you get rid of the handles? Well, I just get rid of them and I tie a knot on the end of the rope, and I sell it that way. Absolutely, you could do that. You get rid of the 2 chrome caps as well. I did see one person in there that wrote to get rid of the rope. Okay, now what are you selling then? Are you selling handles? And actually, that's an example. It's a crazy one, but here is a product that has a jump rope without the rope. Okay, now this has got a little computer chip in it, and when you rotate it, it makes a ticking noise, and it counts how many revolutions you did, and so on, and it costs probably 5 times as much as the original rope. Now, trimming you do for different reasons. This person trimmed something to come up with some brand new thing that nobody else has, and they have 100% of the market share. A jump rope without a rope. And by the way, they sell this to people who are uncoordinated, that don't have big ceilings, tall ceilings. That's their little niche. It's not a cost reduction play. It's a create a whole new market and own 100% of it play. You trim for several different reasons. There's 5 reasons to trim. 3 of them are obvious. One is to trim for cost. Another one is to trim for a problematic step or part. A third one is to reduce complexity. 4th reason to trim is to circumvent a competitor's patent. And 5th reason to trim would be to come up with something really interestingly new that nobody else ever thought of. Now, here's the point of trimming. The point of trimming is there are rules. It's not just think about trimming. There's specific things that you should be thinking about that will help you trim. And I have a little example on a projector that I want to show you. If you've got a projector, you've got a power supply that powers a motor. Motor rotates a fan. A fan cools a bulb, and a bulb projects light. And you got a bracket that holds a motor, and you got humidity in the air that's corroding, and a motor is vibrating. Let's say I want to trim. By the way, you don't have to draw it like this. You can just write them down. Let's say I want to trim the fan. If I were to ask people who design a projector, can you trim the fan? They're going to say no. And the answer is yes, you can trim it. You just don't know how yet. So what the trimming thing does is it gives you 6 specific things to think about. And these 6 things came from analyzing patents that have been simplified. Here's how somebody got a patent. They simplified a system. Or somebody created a product, didn't even patent it, but it's a very simple product. They got rid of 3 parts. They analyzed all these simplification ideas, and they found out the generic little trick that somebody did to get rid of it. And I'll show you an example of that. So let's get rid of it using the first trick. First of 6 rules is trimming rules. And you guys all know this already. This is a very logical one. If I have a 10-part system, I want to get rid of part number 7. This first rule says you can get rid of part number 7 if you can get any of those other 9 parts to do the job. So in this example, it says, if you want to get rid of the fan, You can get rid of the fan if you can get any of the other parts of the system to do a cooling job. There's your new thinking. Your new thinking is, how can a bracket cool a bulb? That's insane, because brackets hold things. They don't cool things. And then somebody says, you know what, that bracket's made out of metal. Metal's actually a really good heat sink. If I can get that bracket close enough to the bulb, I might be able to pull heat away from it. And there's other ways on here. There's actually ways to cool things using power, using electricity. Okay, there's one rule. Here's another example of that same rule. I've got a mountain bike. I want to get rid of the shock absorber on a mountain bike. That's insane to even think about. Well, let's do it then. Let's use rule number one. Rule number one, trying to get rid of this shock absorber, says, look at all the other parts of the system. Somebody type in something else that might be able to be used to do the function of a shock absorber, which is to absorb shock. Can anybody see any ideas on how something else could absorb the shock? The frame, the tires is coming in. Yeah, the tires for sure, right? The tires, the big tires, they can absorb shock. You can make them bigger. Somebody said the frame. You could put spring in there. Somebody said the seat or the cushion. You know, you can make that do it. And then there are some things that you can't, like the spokes. But if you think hard about it and you give yourself permission to try, is there a way the spokes could do it? And here's an example. The shock wheel. It's where the spokes are absorbing the shock. And there's different versions of that. Now you might ask, well, can I get rid of the spokes? I mean, that's some crazy trimming. Well, here's a bike that doesn't have spokes. Now, I don't know what benefit that bike has. It better have a benefit. You don't get rid of stuff just to get rid of it. This is probably much more expensive, but, you know, what could we do with spokeless bike? Well, okay, you know, we can put groceries in there. Who knows what the benefit is? The point is that you can trim things. And I'll give you one other rule, and then I'll open it up because I think I'm out of time. And
yeah, we've got 6 minutes left before the top of the hour, Dave. Okay.
Let me just show this last slide, and then we'll open up to questions. Is that okay?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Yeah, here's another rule, and that's one of the things I'm trying to show you, is that these little strategies, that if you use these strategies, it gets you thinking in a different direction. So rule number 3, it says the recipient of the function does not need to exist. What that's saying is you can get rid of the fan if you get rid of the bulb. And I think everybody out there will agree that if I get rid of the bulb in a projector, I don't need a fan. It's absolutely true. It'll absolutely work. And this is what's called reformulating your problem, because now we have a new problem statement. Our new problem statement is, how do I project light without a bulb? Can anybody type in the box here? Any possible way to project light without a bulb? Sunlight, somebody said. Brian Miller. Mirror, Monica says. Amy's a mirror as well. Cyclotron, I'm not sure how you can do that. I think that may be a joke. But anyway, there are projectors out there that have no bulbs. They use LEDs, and LED is not a bulb. It's a diode. And Doug says a laser. There are also projectors out there that work with lasers. So, and you know, who knows what else? A chemical reaction, fireflies, I don't know, you know, but you want to think creatively. So we looks like we're out of time. We're going to open it up for some questions. And I appreciate all of you guys listening in. And so, Norval, I'll turn it back over to you, and we can open it up for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dave. If anybody has questions for Dave, we still have some time left. Please go ahead and type them into the chat box.
I can maybe open up the chat box.
Oh, one question that I have for you, Dave. Will there be a copy of the slides from today's talk available?
I think you're recording this, so you have a recording available. But I don't give out the training slides. I typically do not do that. But again, you have the
right. We have the recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if there's a particular slide or something that somebody wants, just shoot me an email. Let me know, and you know, I'll do that. But I just don't give away the training material.
Okay. Just thought I would ask because I know we always get that as a question. I thought I'd
Sure.
save everybody the
Yep.
trouble of asking it.
Yep. Uh, so questions, guys. And by the way, if anybody has a question afterwards, and you want to talk more, certainly reach out to me. Very, very
Okay.
willing to chat with you.
Dave, we do have questions coming in.
Good.
First question is, what books on innovation would you recommend?
I wish I had a little bit more time to answer that, because I'm not down in my office. But there are a few books out there. I mean, I would Google innovation and inventive thinking and see what you come up with. There's one, whoever asked that question, reach out to me and let me look at what's on my shelf and give you some names of books. That's probably the best way to do it because none of them are popping out. I know them, I can visualize them, but I don't know the author and the titles exactly. But there's a lot of stuff out there on that.
Okay.
One of them is a toolkit. One of them says it's like an innovator's toolkit, and they have 50 different techniques that you can use. And I know one of the authors is Silverstein. I think it's David Silverstein. And it might be called the Innovator's Toolkit. It might be that. It's a yellow cover. I can visualize it, but I just don't have it in front of me.
Okay. We'll move on to the next question.
Sure.
I think this is a question and not a statement. A strategy for getting people to engage in out-of-the-box thinking. How do you get folks unstuck?
Well, I think that's exactly what I was trying to point out to you. People get stuck, I believe, because they just don't know what to do next. They don't know, what is step 1, step 2, step 3 in the process. And with all these little techniques, there's ways to get unstuck because there's a little bit of a process, a little bit of a recipe on how to do things. And that gets the people unstuck. I mean, I guess I'd need to understand a little bit more about why they're stuck. And my answer was, I think people get stuck because they just don't know what to do next. And when you see all these different strategies, you get people engaged really easy because you're facilitating them. You're telling them, this is the first thing to think about. Then let's think about this. Then let's look at it from this direction and then this direction. And they get unstuck. It's about perspectives. It's about psychological inertia, and paradigms are what make you stuck. And all these different perspectives give you an opportunity to look at things differently.
Okay, we'll move on here. The next question, could a tool be to hire young people?
That's another thing that's really important, and it's the same thing I was saying about perspectives. Not only different perspectives as far as tools on how to think, but you want different perspectives on personalities and experiences. You want young people, you want older people, you want people that really know this product that you're working on, or service you're working on, and you want people that don't know anything about it. Now, when you say young people, that's one perspective that I think is important, but don't completely rely on that. But one of the reasons young people are good is because they don't have it all depends on how young you mean, too. I've seen a creativity curve that plotted creativity as a function of age, and it peaked at about 12. At 12 is where kids are most creative, and then it drops down. And why does it drop down? Because kids go through school, and they have jobs, and they learn the rules on which to operate. And they follow the rules. And creativity and innovation is about breaking the rules a little bit. So, you have to be aware of the rules that you have to live within, but you also have to be willing to challenge a lot of the current assumptions and break them. So sometimes younger kids are better at that because they don't have all the rules that we have. So that's a big part of it.
Okay, let's see, another question. How to change the mindset of engineers to perform product changes on old products?
How to change the mindset of an engineer. Say that again, to do what?
Oh, okay. How to change the mindset of engineers
Yeah.
to perform product changes on old products?
To perform. Well, you got to look at these old products. I have to think about that, but an old product is only going to be successful if nobody else is doing anything different. I mean, sometimes you can rely on your old products that are bringing in money, and nobody else is really has a better product, so we're okay with that. But if you are making money on it, competition's going to happen, and when you get competition, it's going to be somebody else doing something different. And when they do something different, and what they do is of value, that old product's going to become obsolete. So there's very few old products that are still successful. I mean, there's a decent chunk of them, but it's hard to think about. It really is hard to think about a product that's sold today that hasn't changed in the last 20 years. Now, there are some things like Coke, or Pepsi, some food products that have certain ingredients in them that haven't changed. But, when we talk about durable products, even golf tee, I see somebody type in here golf tee, has not changed. And they have. The golf tee that I like using is not the wooden one anymore. It's the plastic one that never breaks. I think it was awesome. I thought it was awesome when I discovered that, and I had a tee that I could use forever. The worst thing that could happen with it is I lose it. So things change. There's very few products that don't change over time. It's really hard to come up with those. So you have to change. You have to innovate to survive. And your question around convincing, maybe it was an old designer about an old product. If you show them that there's possibility to make things better, some people just believe that you can't make anything better. This is as good as it gets. It can't get any better. Well, then you're due for some kind of a major paradigm shift, or you just need different thinking, because I have yet to see a situation where we could not make some improvements in the product. It's just that you don't know how. And there are. I'll give you a one-word answer, or there's a technique called memorable sensory experience. You take your product and you look at all the senses, all the 5 senses, plus we add 2 senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, extra intelligence, and entertainment. And you take your current product and you say, how can I incorporate an additional sense in there? And I'll guarantee one of those 7 senses is something you can do to change your existing product. And as long as it's something that adds value to your customers, you will change it, and you probably can increase your market share. You had another one.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the next question, Dave.
Sure.
I'm looking at the clock. We're a little bit over.
Yeah.
Could it be the lack of innovation is the result of not feeling comfortable in the workplace to challenge the norm?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's 2 main, and this is something that takes a little bit of time to explain, but there's 2 main things that you need to do to be successful in an organization as far as innovation is concerned. And one is changing your culture, right? Culture has a huge impact on, how well a company performs. And then also skills. And I actually have a mind map on this where, I really focus in on the skills part. That's what I try to help companies with, is how to have the right skills to come up with new ideas that are actually good ideas that can be successful in the marketplace. But having just the skills without the second part, which is the culture, is extremely important as well. So both of those are real important, and both of those are big. Not only are there a lot of skills you can learn, but there's a lot of things that you need to do to make sure you have a good culture. And they're a little bit overlapping too, because sometimes just having better skills improves the culture right there. So.
Okay, next question is there a timeline enforced to achieve innovation?
Not that I know. Is there a timeline that's enforced? I'm not sure I understand that question completely, but I just don't have I don't have a good answer for that. I mean,
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute, Dave. There's some clarification here. The question is, what is the significance of time to innovation to nurture an innovating environment?
What is the significance of time? Let me see if I can.
The significance of time to innovation to nurture an innovating environment.
I don't understand the question completely. What I'll ask that person to do is reach out to me and let's just have a conversation so I can dive into that a little bit deeper, because I don't quite understand. It's hard to answer when you don't understand the question.
Well, I know the individual. If it's okay, I will make sure that he has your contact information, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Okay. We're going to move on here. We've got one more question, and then I think we're going to have to wrap things up. Somebody says, tips on pulling engineers back from innovation when meeting the requirements is the simple goal. For example, we need to drive down the street and not fly to the moon.
All right. If I understand that correctly, one of the things that's important in the beginning when you're developing any new innovative ideas, and it's actually step one in our process, we need to understand what our goals are, or what our objectives, what our deliverables are, and when we create ideas, we need to be able to judge those ideas off of the criteria that was derived from our customers. So, the steps in this process, step 4 is generating ideas, and that's what I've been talking about. But step 1 is about understanding the needs, not only the needs of the customers, but the needs of the business. And before you evaluate any ideas, you should translate those needs, customer needs, business needs, into some very formal or some relatively formal objective criteria, and then you use those criteria to judge, not only to judge the concepts you come up with, but we need those criteria for us to understand completely to create the concepts. So we don't create things that are, way out in left field. We want our ideas to be within the realms of the project that has been developed.
When? Why?
Okay, well, it looks like that's the last question we have, Dave. Unless anybody has anything else here, we're a little bit over, so I'd like to go ahead and thank you, Dave, for presenting for us today.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
And I'd also like to thank everybody else for joining us as well, and for hanging around a little bit past the top of the hour. We did run a little bit late today, but I believe it was well worth it. We hope that everybody will join us on Tuesday for ensuring supplier social responsibility. That will be with Jennifer Stepniowski. It'll be Tuesday, February 27th, 12 noon Eastern Time. Until then, I'd like to wish everyone a good rest of the day. Thanks very much for joining us. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.